Pre-constructed decks in Commander are always a great way for newer players to get into the game. Precons allow for cheap, easy ways to buy a deck, sleeve it up, and either learn about the game or have just a deck that you don't have to worry about building, you don't have to worry about the tokens, you don't have to worry about anything. It's 100% made for you to play right then and there. It's probably one of the easiest ways to get into the game, and it allows Wizards of the Coast to put in new cards along with older cards and reprints that they think Magic the Gathering needs. But there's just a little bit of a problem with these precon decks. For some reason, they always seem to have the more interesting strategies in the 99. What do I mean by this? Well, in pre-constructed commander decks, there's something known as a backup commander. This is a legendary creature that's in the 99 that can also, for the most part, play the same strategy using the 99 in there. In a lot of cases, you can swap out either commander with each other and the deck will run pretty smoothly. Now, here's where my problem arises. I have pretty much always enjoyed the backup commander way more than I have the primary commander. When I got the Caverns of Ixalan precon, instead of choosing the commander they gave, I chose to play Alinda the Duskrose. In March of the Machine, instead of playing Night Tribal, I chose Alinda and Azor. I might be a little bit biased against Alinda. When getting the Phyrexia All Will Be One precon, instead of choosing Nyali, I chose Othari. A lot of these backup commanders seem to almost always have a bit more of an interesting strategy to them. And I think it's because they're more focused around the 99 and being functional in that they're just a generically good legendary creature that can have another strategy totally built around those people. Now, with that being said, the new Duskmourn Commander precons have just come out, and there's one key commander that caught my eye. But before we do any of this, there's something that I need to change real quick. Hello, how's everyone doing? My name's Deck Driver, and I make decks in Magic the Gathering, and I try to give some advice on some deck building habits that I have. I've never shown my face before, but you can expect this to be a regular occurrence from now on. Just trying out some new things, trying to see what it's like to show my face, and maybe it'll make the content just a little bit more smooth and just a bit more engaging for you guys. It's also probably better to have a face that you can look at rather than just see a faceless man behind a microphone. But without further ado, let's get on to the actual topic of the video, which is the Master of Keys. This commander I think has a ton of potential, and I've already brewed you guys a list to play. I think this might be something that I actually mess around with, as when you look at the actual card itself, it's a very similar strategy to some of the things that I have before, especially like Muldrotha. Getting able to play enchantment cards out of the graveyard for an escape cost, and just trying to mill out your entire library and kind of control the game from there. It's a really cool strategy, and I'm here to tell you guys about it. So what are the main goals that we're trying to achieve with the Master of Keys? Well, we're trying to set up a board state that can allow us to stay protected and ramp up as much as possible. So we have a lot of cheap early removal. We have a lot of ways to kind of start filling our graveyard as the turns go along. And we have plenty of ways to ramp. This is also that we can play Master of Keys for X equals 4 to 6. That's kind of the sweet spot to then mill a lot of our cards to try to get the engine running. We run quite a few board wipes as well in order to reset the game. And these board wipes are focused on hitting creatures or artifacts rather than enchantments, so that we can ensure that we're not hitting anything that is important to us. We then run 21 enchantments. These enchantments are here to protect us, to help further our game plan, and also carry us to a victory as the game comes to a close. Things like Court of Grace and Sigil of the Empty Throne allow us to build a board state even when we don't have that many creatures to go off of. Cards like Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, Sphere of Safety, and Greater Oromancy allows our enchantments to stay protected. Now, because this is a slower strategy, we have plenty of ways to slow down our opponents. We've already went over the fact that we run a lot of board wipes and single target removal. We also have 2 Rule of Law effects in Deafening Silence and, of course, Rule of Law. We don't want our opponents to be able to just storm off and take the game away from us. The only thing that's truly going to stop a deck like this is Graveyard Hate and exiling enchantments. So a card like Farewell is definitely something that needs to get out of the way. And of course, Graveyard Hate is not very fun either. Because we're worried about just a single card that can get rid of all of our enchantments, we do have a bit of counter magic that can stop that. For Graveyard Hate, we do have an Orbs of Warding to give us hexproof, but for the most part, that's about it. We'll just have to try to either counter it, or if it's a Bajuka Bog or something like a Soul Guide Lantern, we just have to hope it doesn't get rid of all of our win conditions. Speaking of win conditions, let's talk about it. So of course our commander is going to be a really big beater if we play it for a lot of mana. This can always be a great win condition, as you can kill at least 1 to maybe 2 players with commander damage, but it's not always reliable. As we mentioned earlier, things like Court of Grace and Sigil of the Empty Throne are going to help us make a board state. We also have a Shark Typhoon in there that's going to help us. Court of Ambition is also a great thing and be able to burn our opponents down. And then we have a Lab Man win condition as well. Because we're going to be milling so many cards all the time, important to have a backup in case you do get to your last couple cards. In most cases though, it's going to be a combination of beating your opponents down through your commander and the few creatures you do have, and the board state you make from the token maker. But Lab Man's in there just in case. This deck is super fun. I haven't played many enchantment decks ever in my life, but this is an awesome start. But let's go on to the test hands. How do you play this deck? In your test hands, you're really looking to find something that can start filling your graveyard and getting you the card advantage that you need. You're also hopefully looking for 1 to 2 pieces of ramp, and you're not really going to keep a hand that's anything less than 3 lands. Our most consistent form of mill is in our command zone, and of course a lot of us doing the thing is from the command zone. So we want to be able to play that not necessarily as soon as possible, but at a reasonable time. The best time to cast the Master of Keys is after you do something like a board wipe, or you get rid of a key piece that might stop you from doing your thing. It's very often that you might keep a board wipe in your opening hand. You play until around turn 6 or 7, and then you'll look to board wipe, and on the next turn, play the Master of Keys into the next couple of turns. You'll be able to play your Ghostly Prison cards, any of these super valuable enchantments that you weren't able to cast earlier in the game. The first couple of turns should be you trying to protect yourself and set up any kind of possible milling strategy you can. Court of Cunning is going to help you with this. Any of the looting creatures that we have, like Rona, Vohar, or Looter Ilkor, or just using early removal on threats that you know can get really big. Your opponents will probably be casting their commanders around turn 4, 5, or 6, which is typical for a commander game, so you want to have removal in those couple of turns so that you can stop their strategy just a little bit quicker so that you can get to the late game that you're looking for. We have some advantage pieces like Monologue Tax and Phyrexian Arena that are great early game pickups that can help you get ahead in both mana or cards. The 4 courts that we have allow you to get Monarch, which allow you to get some of the card advantage. And then of course, outside of our commander, we have plenty of enchantment reincarnation like Builder's Talent, Savine's Reclamation, Hourglass of the Lost, and one of the new cards from the new set, Redress Fate. These really just allow you to make sure that your strategy is a bit more consistent rather than having to rely on your commander to get you the cards that you need. Again, you want to be playing enchantments both from your hand and from the graveyard. So that's the Master of Keys, a super sick enchantment deck. Now, after my last video, you might think this is an interesting deck to build, as this deck really is just kind of trying to wait for the late game and trying not to die in those first couple of turns. This is personally how I think decks like this should be made. Just like a control deck you might see in Standard or Modern, there's plenty of board wipes that can help us get back into the game, and then we have plenty of cheap early removal that can help us stop our opponents on the first couple of turns. Think about it. If we're trying to get to turn 8 at least, then our goal should have those 2, 3, 4, and 5 drops to have some sort of big removal that we can play on those turns so that we don't have to worry about getting to those later stages. That's why we run so many board wipes. That's why we run things like Accursed Marauder. We have plenty of bounce spells and plenty of removal and plenty of counter spells. Now, we're not going to always be able to stop our opponents, but the goal mostly is just to stop the biggest threat. So focus your single target removal on them, and if there's any more than just one, try to use your Ghostly Prison, try to use Table Talk, and try to use your board wipes in order to ensure that you can get to those later stages of the game. Something that this deck is not trying to do is mill out your entire library as fast as possible. My Muldrotha deck really is kind of a race to 0. This deck is not really meant to do that. This deck is supposed to outlast your opponents, build the board state from your courts and enchantments, and also have a big swing from your command zone. It truly is the kind of mid-rangey deck that you're looking for, and it's in some pretty cool colors. So if this deck interests you, check out the Moxfield link in the description below, and if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. I'll be showing my face pretty much every single video from now on, so that's something to look forward to. I think it will make our connection just a little bit better, and I get to show a little bit more of my personality. The Master of Keys is a really cool deck, and I think you should check it out. Thanks for watching.